Food addiction, particularly to those ultra-processed foods, isn't just a personal struggle. It's actually, believe it or not, a business model. So processed food companies will quite literally hire scientists to design products that hijack your brain chemistry, tapping into those dopamine highs and the crashes that follow. And when you realize how much of this is intentional, it kind of makes you think twice about who's really in control and whether it's even worth having these foods around in the first place. My name is Bunny, I am the Renegade Dietitian, and I am here to blend the two extremes of health and food industry, where you've got, the very far westernized culture and practices that think that pesticides and herbicides are great to have and that you can cure everything with a pill. And then you've got the other side that thinks absolutely everything is a conspiracy theorist and everyone's out to try and kill you. I like to think that I sit somewhere in the middle and I have more of a functional and integrative approach to health rather than just the standard Western way, but also not too extreme the other way either. So here you're going to get health and nutrition and lifestyle hacks that still backed by research, but I also talk about the parts that the industry doesn't typically highlight or don't necessarily want you to see. So if you are curious about what's really going on with your food and your health and how to better your health and lifestyle, then please stick around and don't forget to subscribe. All right, so let's pull back the curtain on how companies engineer cravings, and starting with the bliss point. So food scientists often use that term called the bliss point, and it's basically the perfect ratio of sugar and salt and fat that lights up your brain's reward system without ever fully satisfying you. That is also why for most people, one chip or one cookie is never quite enough. The recipe is designed to keep you reaching back in and wanting more, rather than satisfying a craving like I mentioned before. So it feels like lack of willpower in the moment, but really you're responding exactly the way the formula was intended to work, or how they wanted you to respond to it. And this goes deeper than just the flavor or taste of food as well. Companies aren't just guessing when it comes to this. They design foods that tap right into your brain chemistry. Now, I've broken this down in other videos in this series, so if you want the full science behind all of that and how it really does override a lot of your natural bodily processes, then I'll paste the links in the description below. But in this video, I'll just be giving you a quick version of that to understand all of it and how it works. So in the junk food and cravings video, I talk about how dopamine gives you that rewarding high when you eat these certain hyperpalatable foods, and then dynorphins slam it down. So food companies, they know this cycle. So they push recipes that give you the biggest possible dopamine spike, because the bigger the spike, the harder the crashes, which means more cravings, and then that leads to more purchases, and then those companies make more of a profit. So it's literally addiction economics. But the science doesn't stop at your taste buds either. It even reaches into your memory circuits. So recent research showed that neurons in the hippocampus, the brain's memory hub, actually store sugar and fat memories. And food marketing exploits exactly that. Bright packaging, catchy tunes, even, where foods are placed in a store, they all become memory cues. So later, even if you're not actually hungry, those neurons fire, and then suddenly you're craving a product that you weren't even thinking about 5 minutes ago. That is more often than not a random thing. That is actually engineered recall. And if memory makes cravings stick, emotions are the thing that makes them irresistible. So a 2025 discovery showed that neurons in the amygdala, which is our emotional hub in the brain, they can override self-control. So this is why, when you watch an ad, for example, they don't just show food. They show these intense positive emotions often, like joy and belonging and comfort. They're not just selling taste, they're selling emotional triggers that bypass logic and go straight to your survival wiring, right? The things that everybody craves and loves and desires and wants. And that is why a slogan or a family ad, for example, can make junk food feel safe, even when you know it's not, or even normalize something and make you feel like you need it, or that you will miss out by not having it. So if you put all of this together, you've got flavor, you've got chemistry, you've got memory, emotion, all tied together, and you start to see why so many people meet the criteria for food addiction. I mean, even a 2024 review in Current Obesity Reports found that up to 14% of adults now qualify for ultra processed food addiction. And I honestly would argue that it would be higher than that, but that's just what is being reported. That is not an accident. That is millions of people living in a loop of cravings and crashes by design. And it's the same playbook that tobacco and alcohol use. Tweak the formula, target the vulnerable, and profit off dependency. Only this time it's in the cereal aisle, not in a locked shelf behind the counter. So here's the truth. If you've struggled with junk food, it's not a reflection of you or your weakness or your lack of willpower. The system is built to keep you hooked. And it's not one of those, the system this, the system that talks. But there's overwhelming evidence that these foods have been designed in this specific way. Now, this isn't about demonizing food, and I'm not telling you to, label something as bad and ban it forever. We actually know from research that when you put too many restrictions on yourself or you call food off limits, that it usually backfires and you end up craving them even more. And there's probably going to be some times or days where you do choose to have certain ultra-processed foods. Maybe, I don't know, depends who you are and what you value. Some people will simply for pleasure or for social reasons, and that's totally fine. That choice is yours at the end of the day, your discernment. But it's also important to recognize that once you start, some of these foods are designed to be really, really hard to stop eating. And if you know that you get stuck in these cycles and it has been an issue for you, then it can help to either just avoid these or find smarter alternatives. That doesn't mean, everything has to be kale and broccoli. It might just mean adding some fiber or some protein into a sweet recipe to make it more filling and more nutritionally dense so that your body's actually getting some benefit from it, and to reduce the negative side effects that happen from the sugar and other things, right? Or swapping the milk chocolate for dark chocolate, for example, or even using chickpeas and black beans in baking. And yes, trust me, when they blended right, when they used the right recipe, they actually do taste good. The point is that you'll still get the treat, but you're also getting these additional nutrients that help, for example, balance blood sugars and can reduce that can't stop, won't stop effect. So yeah, sometimes having the thing that you're craving might make sense for you, but often those cravings, they are coming from a system that's already been hijacked by processed foods. And in that case, giving in just keeps that cycle alive, unfortunately. What usually works better long-term is to break the cycle and replace it with something that still feels satisfying but actually supports your body. All right, so I know that we live in a day and age where eating these ultra-processed, hyper-palatable foods has definitely become normalized, and I'm actually going to be doing another video on that in the future about how I very much disagree with a lot of that. And part of that is to do with the disordered eating side of things, and people have struggled with that too. And so it's this whole having a neutral approach to food, which I get, but also we weren't designed to eat these foods, in my opinion, anyway. So if you do want to know more about the actual mechanisms at play here internally when you eat these ultra-processed foods, because it goes beyond just a dopamine spike and dynorphin crash, it goes to the level of the microbes and the ones that you're feeding, which lead to an increased desire. It overrides our natural satiety signals. These foods have an overwhelming influence on a lot of our internal processes that make it extremely hard for us to stop and to not crave these foods. So if you still need a little bit more convincing, or you just like to know the science and how everything works, then please go ahead and watch those other videos. They're linked in my description below. And otherwise, I do hope that you found this video helpful or eye-opening. And as always, if you have any questions, then please pop them in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. All right, I will see you in the next one.